Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a topic a lot of us thought we had figured out, the gender gap in academic research. But you know what? Some incredible new research is completely flipping the script, and it's offering more than just a new perspective, it gives us a real plan for action. So let's press play and see the story the data really has to tell. For years, maybe even decades, the conversation around this has felt, well, stuck. Right? We've seen study after study showing this persistent gap in publications between men and women, and it's just so easy to feel like this is a permanent, unchangeable part of academia. It's a pretty demoralizing story of inequity. So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with that old story, the stubborn gap. Then we'll get to the good news. The gap is actually closing. We'll explore where it's closing faster, figure out why by looking at some invisible barriers, and then wrap up with a practical action plan to speed things up everywhere else. Okay, so let's start with that picture we're all too familiar with, that static, frozen-in-time image of inequity in research. You see, for the longest time, most research on this topic was basically taking a picture, a snapshot in time. They'd look at the data from one period and say, yep, the gap's still there. And while that was true for that single moment, that snapshot approach completely misses the bigger picture. It just reinforces this idea that the problem is totally stuck. And this right here is the big idea that changes everything. What happens if we stop looking at still photographs and instead we press play and watch the entire movie? What happens when we look at the data not as a fixed point, but as a story unfolding over time? Well, it turns out the story changes completely. Because when you watch the movie of the last couple of decades, what you see isn't a story of stagnation. It's a story of incredible progress. The gap, it turns out, is closing. Now, to really get this, we need to be clear on two things. First, there's the gender publication gap. Think of this as speed. It's not about who's published more overall, but about the difference in the growth rate. Who's accelerating faster? Then there's gender publication parity. That's the finish line. It's when women's share of publications actually matches their share of the people in that field. So gap is about speed, parity is about proportion. And that's exactly what these researchers did. By watching this movie of data from over 11,000 researchers, spanning from 2002 all the way to 2020, they finally saw the momentum and the change that all those old snapshots had completely missed. So what do they find? It all boils down to this one number. Alpha equals 0.55. Now, in their model, an alpha of 1.0 would mean men and women's publication rates are growing at the same speed. Anything less than 1.0 means women's rates are growing faster. So at 0.55, well, that's not just a little faster. It's proof that women are accelerating and that gap is decisively closing. But what does a number like 0.55 actually look like for a real person? The researchers gave a really powerful example. Imagine a female researcher publishes 8 articles in the years leading up to her tenure review. This growth rate suggests that a male colleague in that same period would likely publish fewer than 5. This isn't about their whole career total. It's about the rate they're publishing now. It shows women aren't just catching up. They're picking up serious speed. But, and this is the big but, like any good movie, there's a plot twist. This progress isn't a single uniform story. It's actually unfolding at very different speeds in different places. It's a tale of two fields. So the researchers compared what they call microdomains, think organizational behavior, fields that often focus on people and psychology, with macrodomains, like strategic management, which tend to look at bigger systems, like entire companies or industries. And the difference they found is, well, it's massive. For a top journal in a microfield, they predicted already hit publication parity back in 2021. But for a top journal in a macrofield, they don't predict parity until 2045. That's a 24-year difference. For a woman starting her career today in one of those macro fields, that gap is her entire career. So this just raises a huge question, right? What is going on? Why are the microfields so far ahead? What are they doing differently that's not only accelerating progress, but also letting women really thrive and become star performers? Answering this gets us to the heart of how we can make this change happen everywhere. To find that answer, we need to shift our focus. We need to stop looking only at individuals and start looking at the environment around them. This is where we get to the why behind all this progress. The key idea here is something called situational constraints. It's pretty simple. An individual's performance isn't just about their talent or hard work. It's hugely shaped by their work environment. So the secret to unlocking star performance for more women isn't about trying to fix them. It's about removing the obstacles in the system that are holding them back. Now, these constraints come in two flavors. First, there's the tangible stuff, the things you can actually see and count. We're talking about being loaded up with invisible work. All those committee assignments and tasks that don't lead to promotion but eat up precious research time. Or things like unequal access to funding and the basic equipment you need to even do the work. But then you have the intangible constraints, the invisible stuff, and this can be just as powerful. These are the cultural barriers. A lack of good mentors, not seeing enough women in leadership roles, or those subtle biases that mean women are often held to a higher standard. And what the research suggests is that the microfields are closing the gap so much faster because they're doing a much better job of tearing down these barriers. And this isn't just a theory, they've got the data to prove it. Take a look. As you can see, the microfields, the ones moving faster, have way more women in leadership positions on their journal editorial boards. They also invest more in things like targeted mentoring. They are actively removing these constraints, and it is clearly paying off. And this is why this research is so important right now. It goes way beyond just diagnosing a problem. It actually gives us a practical toolkit for creating change. It's a real action plan. The ultimate message here is all about taking action. Progress doesn't just happen by itself. The big takeaway is that if we want to speed up equity and help more women become the star performers we know they can be, we have to stop just watching the gap and start actively finding and dismantling these constraints. So how does a department or a university actually do that? Well, the study recommends a really cool diagnostic tool called the critical incidence technique. Step 1, you collect stories of when research performance wasn't great, maybe a project stalled out. Step 2, and this is the most important part, you ask the researchers themselves what was going on in the environment. And step 3, you look for patterns in those stories. That process shines a huge spotlight on the specific, systemic problems that need fixing. And once you have that diagnosis, a really clear roadmap starts to take shape. You can bring in targeted mentoring where it's needed most, like in those macro fields. You can be deliberate about promoting women into those key leadership and editorial roles. And you can start using more equitable metrics, like focusing on lead authorship when you make hiring and promotion decisions. You can build a truly level playing field. So we've gone from a static, frustrating snapshot of a problem to watching a movie of real, measurable progress. This research has basically given us the script for achieving equity. The only question left is, who's going to step up and direct the next scene? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.